Anytime you see a business and brand that has stood the test of time, you can be dead certain that somewhere along the way, someone made a courageous decision with incomplete information, as you're about to discover here on Leaders and Legends. Since the early 1960s, Weber's on Highway 11 has been an Ontario, a Canadian institution, long lineups of customers anxious to gobble up those burgers, shakes, and fries. But there was a crisis not unlike what the global pandemic of 2020 has revealed for this business. In the early 1980s, the Ontario government placed a concrete barrier smack dab in the middle of Highway 11. That restricted the southbound traffic. There was no way customers could get across Highway 11 and get to Weber's. Revenue dropped by about 50%. Consequently, leadership had to make a decision. Paul Weber Sr. and his son decided to do something that was so out of the box, so completely unexpected, so original. They went out and they purchased a footbridge left over from the CN Tower. It was no longer being used. And with $250,000 investment and no guarantees of success, they erected what has become the only privately held footbridge across the middle of a public highway anywhere in Canada. The current owner of Weber's, Tom Rennie, he and I had a chance to talk about the element of risk that was involved by leadership at the time.
Back in the early 1980s, Weber's was faced with a challenge like many other companies were. The highway was divided. And Weber's, I think, had a choice to make, either to continue serving half of the business that it had earned or built up, but with good fortune, the business was able to acquire the bridge, or also known as the Weber's Bridge, across Highway 11, and that has helped tremendously. It put us in a different space than our competitors were. And in that sense, the business has really grown a great deal since.
Yeah, I think that's worth exploring a little deeper. Help people understand, Tom, the depth of the risk that went with the footbridge.
That's right.
And the size of that risk was, if I understand correctly, was like $250,000 when interest rates were through the roof.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been told this story many times from an older generation who would tell me that back in the early 1980s, to go out and borrow money on a high-risk endeavor was suicide. That the idea of building a bridge over a highway, if it could be done, presented long odds, because again, who would want to park and walk up a set of stairs and across a bridge over a highway and stand in line? But I think Mr. Weber's foresight proved that they would, and the gamble paid off, because in 1983 the bridge was erected, and business was so great that the business of Weber's actually doubled really overnight. They had to build a second addition to the building. They expanded the picnic area. They doubled the parking lot, and that was really a point of differentiation between it and its competitors at that time.
But when the Weber's built the bridge, there was no guarantee.
There was no guarantee
that this $250,000 investment would pay off.
That's correct.
What does that tell you about the power of vision and commitment and leadership?
Well, there's an expression, if you build it, they will come. And I think that holds true with the Weber's Bridge. I think the idea of taking a chance at a time when financing was expensive, the question of whether people would continue to make the effort, the physical effort of crossing the bridge, I think carried enormous risks. And without the bridge moving forward, I would question, even to this day, whether the success of Weber's would be where it is with or without the bridge. So it has played a major role. It has created a huge discussion point with people who are familiar with it, and it has allowed the business to sustain itself going forward.
As our friend Tom Rennie has confirmed, and as the legacy that is Weber's on Highway 11 clearly illustrates, long-term brand building is its own discipline, and the disciplines most required are leadership and entrepreneurship. Investing in things like a footbridge that aren't sure things, running towards risk, not away from it. Anytime you see A remarkable business and brand that has endured, has created legacy. You can be sure courageous decisions were made by leaders operating with incomplete information, which really is no different than what we've been dealing with throughout the global pandemic of 2020. As always, we really appreciate you taking the time to stop by and watch. If you see value in these videos and these stories, please share them with others. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and thanks again for watching. Leaders and Legends, where you never know who you're going to meet or what you'll discover.